Dear friends, welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to provide you with a diplomatic briefing on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Egypt. This is not so much a summary of what really transpired there, but a few thoughts and a few reflections on this meeting, which is undoubtedly very important both for Egypt as well as India. This is the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Egypt since 1997. That's 25 years ago. It gives you a clear indication of how India and Egypt, which at one time were close partners in the non-aligned movement during the Cold War, and Gamal Abdel Nasser and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru were such good friends, and they together, provided a voice to the global South and to the non-aligned world during the Cold War. But since 1997, the fact that no Indian Prime Minister has visited Egypt is a clear indication that the two countries' relations were just drifting apart. Traditionally speaking, there is a lot of goodwill for India in Egypt. There is a lot of India's people who like India. I've traveled to Egypt on several occasions, and the moment people realize I'm from India, uh, I try to speak to them in Arabic and practice my Arabic, with, even though the Egyptian Arabic is a little bit difficult to understand. The Egyptians are more interested in sharing movie dialogues. Sholay is one of the most popular movies there, so everyone wants to uh, recite dialogues from Hindi films. They always talk about Shah Rukh Khan and Salman Khan and Amitabh Bachchan. So it's very interesting that there is a lot of respect and there's a lot of India's soft power in Egypt. So it is surprising that the two countries have not been closer allies all these years. So it's good to see that at least the current prime minister is trying to once again build good relations between India and Egypt. And if you recall, General Sisi, the president of Egypt, was invited as a chief guest to India's 74th Republic Day celebrations in January. So he was the chief guest. So India has already extended a lot of respect and signaled that Egypt is important for India. And on this visit, the Egyptian president gave Prime Minister Narendra Modi the highest Egyptian award, the Order of the Nile, indicating that India is also equally important to Egypt. Uh, there are five major powers in the Middle East. Israel, the only nuclear power, with the unlimited backing and support of the United States, which makes it really an overwhelmingly dominant and powerful player in the Middle East. And then you have Iran and Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. So, of these five major powers, India has clearly very good relations with Israel, dating back to the Kargil War when Israel supported India, and subsequently the creation of I2U2, in which India and Israel, United Arab Emirates, and the United States are part of the Western Quad. You could argue the West Asian Quad. So India does have good relations with Israel, and then you can, if you look at it, Turkey is perhaps the only country, a major power in the Middle East, which at the moment does not have good relations with India, even though India did try to improve its relations when the earthquake hit Turkey. India sent a very large delegation to help Turkey out. India's relations with Iran have always been good, and if it hadn't been for U.S. pressure, India and Iranian relations would have improved. And still, with the Chabahar port, you can see that India and Iran are continuing to cooperate in spite of United States pressure. India and Saudi Arabia lately have begun to drift apart as Saudi Arabia has moved more and more closer to China, and especially after the China mediated peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So that really leaves Egypt, which is kind of drifting apart. And since everybody has abandoned the Palestinian cause and the US does not, the US is not doing much to basically bring about the two-state solution, Egypt's significance to the United States has diminished a bit. So Egypt is basically a tool for the United States to manage Israeli interest in the region. and as efforts to create a two-state solution have completely disappeared in this administration, I think Egypt is less and less important. So Egypt feels itself adrift in geopolitics without any direction, without any positive foreign policy. So I'm sure Egypt is going to be happy that India is now speaking for the global south and wants to basically sponsor Egypt to become part of the BRICS. India also wants to raise the total amount of trade between Egypt and India to about $12 billion. India wants to have a place in the Suez economic zone, and so on and so forth. India sees Egypt as a gateway to Africa, to the Middle East, and even to Europe. And so suddenly, India's growing global interests and India's growing global economic and geopolitical interests are also going to rub off and increase the importance of Egypt as essentially a stepping stool for India to become the voice of the global South and also start playing a major role in the geopolitics and geoeconomics of North Africa. But is Egypt ready to play with the big boys in BRICS, a, a grouping which is in many ways without West and could be seen as anti-West, because Egyptian military still depends on US aid, which is in the excess of $700 million a year, I think. So I'm not very sure whether Egypt is ready to fully put itself in BRICS, where there is both Russia and China besides India in the grouping. So anyway, I also want to share with you that Egypt is not really in a very good economic health. That is the reason why its political influence in the Arab world and the Middle East and North Africa has declined significantly. Egypt is a country of about 104, 105 million people, and its GDP is just about $380 billion. So even though its per capita income is nearly double of India, it's really not in a very healthy economic situation. Its per capita income is $4,500, which when adjusted for purchasing power parity becomes 15,000. Its exports are about 50 to 60 billion, and its imports are 70 to 80 billion, which means every year it has a negative trade balance. It has very low reserves of foreign currency. And the only major sources of foreign currency and hard currency for Egypt is some of its oil exports, the remittances it gets from the Egyptians who work abroad, especially in the Middle East, the Gulf, and some in the West, the tariffs and the fees that it charges for Suez Canal, and of course tourism. Thanks to the pyramids, Egypt has been a fascination for a lot of Westerners in particular, and now tourists even from China and other places are coming. So the three major sources of hard currency for Egypt is remittances, the fees on Suez Canal, and tourism, and some oil exports. So the economy is not really doing well. Egypt's inflation rate is expected to hit about 30%. That's in the Pakistan range. Unemployment is over 7%. It has a growth rate of 4 to 5, between 4 and 5%. But the high unemployment and high inflation really undermines whatever growth it is showing every year. Plus, apparently, the Egyptian government unnecessarily spends a lot of resources to keep the value of the Egyptian pound artificially high. And that is another unnecessary expense that the Egyptian government is incurring. It is kind of having a negative impact on the economy. So at the moment, Egypt's economy is not doing really well. But yet, India sees Egypt as a potential for its defense exports. There is talks of selling Tejas, maybe 30 to Egypt in the next few years. And there are also other defense-related equipment and that India wishes to sell to Egypt. So anyway, Egypt is an important country. And if India supports Egypt in the BRICS, with Egypt giving Narendra Modi a huge award, etc., it sort of sends a signal that the criticism that Mr. Modi and India are receiving about the way they treat their minorities, especially Muslim minorities, they can point to Egypt and say, look, a country like Egypt is also so supportive of this particular government in India. So that clearly shows that we are not treating Muslim minorities in any bad way. Otherwise, why would Egypt be so friendly with us? Egypt is a country which abandons the human rights of its own country. So you can't expect a dictator like Sisi to care about anybody's human rights. On a daily basis, he violates the human rights of his own country people. But I also want to remind you that Egypt was one of the countries that did not show up for G20 meeting in Kashmir. They did not issue a statement that saying that we are doing this for these reasons, but they definitely did not come. But nevertheless, the Narendra Modi government has worked very hard to improve India's relations in the Middle East, and it shows. Narendra Modi has been given awards by the Palestinians, by Egypt, by Bahrain, and so they have received a lot of awards from Muslim countries. India's trade with all of these countries has improved. Literally, millions of Indians work in these countries. So there are lots of remittances coming to India from these Muslim countries in the Gulf. So all in all, the relationships between India and the Middle East are getting better and better. And India's desire to become the voice of the global South is becoming more and more true, so to speak, with more and more countries reaching out to India. So when India speaks for Africa to become a part of G20, permanent member of G20, it is speaking for the global South. And when India sponsors or recommends Egypt to become a member of the BRICS, it's again speaking for the global South. So in that sense, you could argue that this visit to Egypt not only cements India-Egyptian relations, but also cements India's growing stature as a leader of the global South. So I hope you found these brief reflections on Prime Minister Modi's visit to Egypt useful, thoughtful, thought-provoking. So please subscribe to Khanversations, like the video. Don't forget to share it with your friends and your colleagues. Ring the bell icon so that you get notifications to the future videos that I post. Thank you very much. This is Muqtedar Khan. Until next time, be safe, be nice, be happy.